And we're off.
Welcome, everyone.
Flying on this rock in space.
Flying. Like flying.
We are flying at light speed through space. Do you ever think about that? Flying through space
fast.
on a friggin' rock.
When I think about it too hard, I start to get a little crazy. But welcome to another episode of Conscious Conversations.
That's a conscious conversation in itself.
Episode 7, Creating an Abundant Mindset. We're coming at you from Charlotte, North Carolina, the humble abode of my parents, and we're having some good old family time tonight. Right. We're excited and feeling very abundant. So we're ready to dive into this topic with you folks.
Very excited about this. This is obviously something that is on a lot of people's minds. How to create an abundant mindset amidst all of the chaotic thoughts that we go through.
Well, and just abundance in general. This is a key theme. Key theme. People are obsessed with abundance, right? The topic of abundance. And I think Chris and I are really excited to kind of bust a few abundant myths. What's up, Rich?
Hey,
We're
Rich.
here to bust a few abundance myths, and really get down to the nitty gritty of it, I think, and hash it out between ourselves, because this is a conscious conversation where Chris and I like to talk to each other, but include you in on the conversation and provide tips and tricks and whatever comes out. No scripts, no bullet points, literally just flow. This isn't something that we prepared before we come on. That's why we love conscious conversations.
Just go with the flow. That's what type of people we are, so we might as well embody that on this conscious conversation about abundance. So let's break this down. Let's start it off. So what is abundance? What does it mean?
Can I be completely honest? When I hear someone say abundance, I almost cringe, and it's no judgment of the person. It's the simplicity, or really the complexity, that we've created around such a simple thing.
It's very simple.
That
Actually,
makes me cringe.
In fact, a lot of things we talk about are quite simple, but the human condition tends to overcomplicate.
Don't we?
Every single thing possible. I overcomplicate things that do not need to be overcomplicated. And now I'm coming to the realization on many of these things that all along it was that simple. And that's what we'll talk about tonight, about abundance.
Yeah, abundance, like people look at it as if it's something outside of themselves.
That's the first mistake. I've done it for years, and I continue to do it up until most recently. We will have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. And I've heard you say it, and I'm not pointing fingers. I hear people say it. I've probably said it before too, that I just can't remember. The most common phrase, I want more abundance. I want more abundance, which is really funny because it's kind of a contradiction or a paradox. A paradox is the best word for that, because abundance is not something outside of us. It is everything that we already are: abundant, infinite, no ends, no limits. But what creates this illusion as if we are suddenly outside of abundance are the beliefs and distortions that we carry with ourselves that tell us we are not of the same abundance that we seek. But let's get real for a second. Abundant just means to be a lot of, to have a lot of, to be expansive. You can have an abundance of anything. But when people say the word abundance, I know what they mean. They're saying, I want more money. I want to live abundantly.
Or I want more love.
I want more love. I want more money. Most of the time it's I want more money, right? Because that's what we want. But
we've tied abundance to money for sure. That those are interchangeable really at this point in the game. But abundance can be anything.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what it is. There's an abundant amount of trees on Earth. There's an abundant amount of everything available to us, but that's where we'll get into, I think.
And I want to say, though, before we dive in that rabbit hole, is that we can have an abundance of bad things, what we call bad things. You can have, there is no separation of it. We are all abundant beings in our own true nature. We are literally infinite. But when we start to look at it through these lenses, you can have an abundance of lack. You can have an abundance of negativity. You can have an abundance of pain, an abundance of suffering, an abundance of sorrow. But so I think what's important is that we get really clear on what we are looking to align with more of. And what that is literally our true nature, which is naturally abundant.
Mm-hmm.
The things that are keeping us in this box of lack of what we perceive to be abundance are really just our fears and all the things we've told ourselves that aren't true about ourselves and the world, that start to shape the way we create our reality, which therefore creates an external reality that reflects a constriction, a containment, an imprisonment that we've created within our own being.
So I can tell you exactly where these fears come from, and I can tell you that it's probably, I'm 99.9% relating to every single person in this world that has this and approaches it from an outside perspective, like it's outside of ourselves. The number one thing is the scarcity mindset, that there's a finite amount of whatever it is, money, things, whatever material good, love, there is a finite amount of it, that there isn't enough to go around for everybody. So that's one part of where the separation happens. So now we are constantly in this competitive mode of chasing this. And now we can go down the conspiracy rabbit hole and talk about that and where that actually comes from. But really what it comes from is this scarcity mindset. And from scarcity, we want more of something that what is perceived to be outside of ourselves. But we can then break down what it means to tap into yourself first, and then realign with that feeling of being abundant and receiving abundance, because you are in alignment with your abundant self.
But not just receiving abundance. Abundance of what? Abundance of the pure joy that we all want, that we already are. We just gotta get the fuck out of our own way. And that's the funny thing. That's why I laugh about it, because we've made it so complex. There are books and books and books and movies and documentaries and everything written and created about abundance. And they all have the same message. And it's the key message I think we are all missing. It's how simple it really is.
You know how I really love that helps break this down a lot? So oftentimes, we've done these different challenges and things like that. But most recently, I've tapped back into Deepak Chopra's 21-day abundant meditation. And it's a series of 21 day. Him and Oprah have done a ton of them over the years. I've done a lot of them. But I wanted to tap back into this because I've just recently really started tapping into my own abundant nature and feeling what that actually feels like. Not like conceptualizing this and saying, oh yeah, I get it, I'm abundant, and really just like pretending that I know what it means when I really have no fucking clue. But tapping back into it and really tapping into what Deepak says, and he breaks it down in such a wonderful manner. And I really recommend anybody really tap into this if you have time. It's on YouTube, you can get it. But really, it's what we're talking about, how simple this actually is. And it's really getting out of our own way, because we stand in our own way all the time, no matter what it is, whether it's abundance or anything else. We're the ones putting ourselves in a prison constantly.
Through our distortions and our fears.
Through the distortions and fears. And as Deepak breaks it down, and we can go into that a little bit, but it really is just really embodying abundance throughout the day. And it's these little mantras or things that you can think, like today, that I receive and I have everything I already need. If you wake up and you say, I already have everything I need. Look you might not have all the money in the world that you want, but you woke up in a warm bed. You can go into the bathroom. There's an abundant amount of water. You can turn on that faucet. You can brush your teeth to get a clean mouth, because who doesn't want a nice clean mouth in the morning? Hop in a shower, take a warm shower, go downstairs, grab stuff. There's an abundant amount of things already in your life. It's being grateful for those things too, and that's where those two match up.
And, I want to kind of piggyback off what you said, though, because it's not just the things that reflect the abundance. It's your ability to be present with the thing as it is.
Absolutely. So
that is right there, ladies and gentlemen, abundant mindset. Being present fully with whatever it is. Because like he said, you could wake up in a warm bed and brush your teeth. Not everybody has that. Not everybody has those amenities. There are people starving on the streets.
The thing is, can you do that without all that?
Exactly. And that's where you get into, take for example, monks that live with practically nothing, but when they practice this deeply, you don't hear them say, I want more abundance, because they don't need to want more abundance, because they are abundant. They are there presently in whatever it is that they are, whether it's cleaning the floors, meditating, taking a walk in nature, eating simply, sometimes not much at all, if at all, throughout the day. And that's not to say, now here's the thing, then we get into the whole concept of like, we create our suffering. We create our suffering. For example, like Ezra. Let's talk about Ezra for a moment.
Sure.
One of my students in Tanzania. It's a very different life there. Very different life. And Chris and I occasionally send some money to Ezra because he's an orphan. He doesn't have family. The one family he does have, he doesn't have people to really count on.
When we were in the Peace Corps, she was an English teacher in Africa. That's where we met, if you don't know us. But anyways, Ezra was one of her students, just to give a little framework.
He's a young man now. He's 18, 19 years old. The simplicity of the life, where some people who have everything might say, oh, poor Ezra. Mm-hmm. He's struggling. Yet this young man wakes up every day grateful, happy, appreciative, and he lives his life. He lives his life. And now I'm not saying that everyone needs to do this, but this is a perfect example of what it means to have an abundant mindset, despite what your external reality may be showing you, defined by societal standards of what abundance is.
And that's really all it comes down to, because our standards. How many times have somebody said to you when we were in Africa, mm-hmm. saying, oh my gosh, poor those people, they don't have anything. Like, they have everything. They live off the land, sure, from a material standard that this consumerist culture we live in.
Our comfortable material standard.
Sure, they may not have all of the amenities, but I can tell you some of the happiest people I've ever mm-hmm. been met in my entire mm-hmm. life. And that really rubbed off on me. But of course, I forgot that really quickly mm-hmm. when I came back to the States, because I even got trapped in the whole
needing more, wanting more.
It's a trap unless you consciously are aware of it at all times and choose to step out of it.
It's like the minimalist vegan. They talk about that.
We interviewed on our summit.
Yeah, we interviewed them on the Vegan Warrior Summit, but they talk about that. The more virus, wanting more. And what is this more? It's not that we're condemning the desire itself.
No, well, shit, I have a desire. There's some things I would definitely like to, grab or whatever mm-hmm. the word is. We've been traveling all day.
It's the intention behind it. What are you feeling within yourself? What are you telling yourself is not good enough, and therefore you need this outside thing? Mm. That's the thing. Like, there are so many ways we get in our own way of opening to our own infinite abundance, which is kind of like a repetitive thing to say, our own infinite abundance. But then we also, because we determine how everything is around us, we gauge our abundance by our external reality, because that's our human condition. If we can flip that and go inward, that's a little bit different story.
It definitely is.
And I had a point that I was trying to make, but I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, let's do this. We kind of broke this down a little bit of where our perceived lack of abundance comes from, our perceived lack of the things that we desire mm-hmm. and all of that. We broke that down. It comes down to the fear, the scarcity mindset, and obviously
focusing on what we don't have. Let's break scarcity down for a second. Scarcity mindset is focusing on what we don't have more so than what we already are. Not have. Let's get rid of the word have. Let's just throw that out the window. Are. Let's just use the word are. Focusing on what we aren't more than we're focusing on what we are. But the aren't is all an illusion that we're making up in our heads based on what we've learned as children growing up.
The thing is that when we focus on what we don't want, it's what we do get in return. Mm-hmm. It's the laws of the universe. What you focus on, what you put your energy into, your vibration into, your emotions into, is what you align with.
If it's a state of being.
If it's a state of being. But what I'm saying is, if you have a constant state of fear about the things that you don't have, we're going to use that again. It's the only thing I can use right now, that what we don't have is generally what we start to attract, and then we say align with, and then we say, well, why is this happening to me? Why is this going on in my life? I have the worst luck. I have the worst luck. How many times have I heard that? I have bad luck. There's no such thing as bad luck.
There's no such thing as good luck either.
There's no such thing as good luck.
In our opinions.
But so I want to just distill this information. I know we've kind of rambled and we've been all over the place in the best way, because this is how our conversations actually go. Yes. This is not fake. We are like being our authentic selves, talking about how we usually talk about these subjects. We just ramble. But to give you guys a piece of information and something to take away from this is, what can we do? Can you break down possibly some of the steps we need to be able to step into our abundant selves, to be able to align with our abundant selves, and to continue to live in that mindset, or in that embodiment of what it means to be abundant?
Absolutely. And I'm really, thank you for asking, Christopher.
Because we're going to push this on to the coach, and I'll contribute where I feel like. But.
Mom says, hey there, she's downstairs watching this. This is, first and foremost, I think we have to shift we have to question our beliefs first. We have to question our beliefs about abundance. What does that mean? We have to question our beliefs, define those beliefs, and find the root. Where did it come from? It's not to say that the belief is wrong. It's just to get curious and become that observer of our life. That gives us the power. That gives us the control to become conscious creators of our reality. First and foremost is the space to observe and the awareness.
And so what are we questioning? We're questioning all of the beliefs that we've gathered so far, all of what we've been told by society, by our parents, by everybody. Why? Always be asking the question, why?
Why do I believe this?
Why is this the way it is? Why do I have to believe this?
Why do I believe there's not enough money to go around? Why do I believe that if I make money, I'm no longer a spiritual person? Why do I believe that if I have or express myself in an abundant way according to societal standards, that other people won't like me or will like me too much? You see, I could go down the rabbit hole. Getting curious about why we believe the things we do, and then getting honest with our fears about it. Because sometimes we're not aware that we might believe that I might suddenly turn into an asshole if I have status and money and this and that, right? But first, I want to reinsert the fact that an abundant mindset has nothing to do with what you have or don't have. It has everything to do with your presence and whatever it is that you're experiencing, whether that's nothing or everything. So when we can do that, we become the fly on the wall once again, and we can observe and we can check it out without invested emotion, right? We become that observer. But then we have to switch our language about having, about owning, about possessing, because that's where we get into this idea that I'm abundant because I have X amount in my bank account. I'm abundant. This reflects my abundance because I have this, I have that. Once again, let's retrain our brains to start looking at it as, what am I already in this moment as I experience it? And then see how, when you match with that alignment within yourself, how your external reality reflects that. Because your external reality is just a projection of what you're experiencing inside. So, but this is another thing. That's where you get into, you can't define what it means to be abundant by the things that are around you.
It's a feeling.
It's a feeling. It's a being. Also, tapping into the present moment, that kind of piggybacks off the other two. Tapping into that present moment.
And how do we do that?
Well, everybody's different. It depends.
How do you do that?
How do I do it? I become the observer of the fact that I'm not in the present moment. And that just comes from practice. Like, oh, I'll realize that I'm multitasking too much. I'm not really giving my full focus on one thing. Or I'll notice that I'm daydreaming about the future, therefore causing anxiety or stress. Or I'm thinking about the past, therefore causing anxiety or stress. And I'll say, oh, something's not going right here. And then,
and just to say, it's literally impossible to be in the present moment every single hour of every single day through the rest of your life. You bring yourself back to those moments, and you can create more presence. Even Eckhart Tolle having this conversation, The Power of Now. I'm sure people that are liking the spiritual text, you may have read it, but he even talks about how, yes, the power is in the now, but even himself, a great spiritual teacher, has to find himself coming back to the present. Now it gets easier and easier, but at the same point, you know, it takes practice. It really does. You're retraining your mind.
And I think we had a Conscious Conversations episode about this.
We did, yes.
Yeah. And so refer back to an older episode to get more tips on living mindfully. But when I'm noticing that I'm everywhere else, I can tap into my body. Literally just, there is no trying. There is no doing. It's literally just being, feeling, noticing, seeing, hearing, experiencing without forcing away thoughts, without forcing myself to be quiet, just letting it pass through. It's like a movie reel, just, and I'm seeing it, and I'm noticing it, I'm like, oh, okay, there it goes.
I like mantras, and the reason they work for me is that if I am out of the moment, you know, just even washing dishes, saying the same mantra, I am, whatever, I am, just I am. You know, that's a mantra I like to repeat a lot. But that brings me right in the present moment, and I am there living that mantra. So for me, mantras help me a lot. So So we have questioning, we have tapping in, becoming that observer, and then tapping into the present moment.
Right. And when you tap into that present moment and you notice and you just settle into awareness, you're able to actually feel how infinite you are. Because when you're present, you're not outside of yourself with your mind. You're suddenly into wholeness. You are the infinite being that you are. And when you get a taste of that, you start to remember that. You're like, oh, hey, yeah, this is home.
Nectar.
This is home. This is home. And without analyzing it, just feeling it, being it, that is the alignment that you need to remain in if you want your external reality to reflect that abundant nature internally. But then there comes gratitude.
I was just going to say, and I'm glad you said it.
Then there comes gratitude, because without gratitude, we will never be satisfied.
And that comes to the point where I was making before, if you were stuck through this whole entire thing, was that we have, you know, we wake up in the morning, like I said before, we wake up in this warm bed, being grateful for waking up in that warm bed, being grateful to go brush your teeth in the sink, being grateful to hop in a warm shower, being grateful to, so every single moment we can practice gratitude throughout our entire day.
But can you be grateful if you're washing your clothes by hand? Can you be grateful when you're squatting over a hole in the ground? Can you be grateful? Someone doesn't like what we're saying. What a load of bollocks. See, and that's actually a really beautiful thing. And I'm glad that she said that, because that is our mentality, that we've been so deeply conditioned to believe that this conversation is in fact bollocks.
You know how long it took me to have this conversation in this moment, in this time right now? I've taken years of trying to really come to this point of where I am now. And of course it's still an evolution, but like I've been in my head for so long, you can't even imagine the wheels that have been spinning about this exact same topic for years, since we met over 4 years ago, trying to really hone in on what this actually means and how do I actually feel this, because up until recently I can actually feel it now. Like, holy shit.
And it takes time. It takes time. You know, and this person's really upset that we're babbling away about this. And I want to invite you to just get curious about why this pushes your buttons. And it's okay if we're your mirror for this projection you're experiencing. That's fine. Like, I welcome that.
We love you too.
I welcome that, because there is no separation here. And keep it's fine.
Rich had said something.
My favorite quote. Here, you can put it up on the screen.
Oh, can I?
Mm-hmm. Rich says, my favorite quote on abundance came from a fortune cookie. Abundance comes from connecting to the richness of life. Beautiful. It is. That's what it is, because life is not separate from that abundance, that infinite essence that we really are. And I'm glad that you shared that, Rich. So.
And we've read a book, and now we're talking about it. We have read a lot of books on abundance, but that is a part of the process. But then it comes to integration phase of actually living it.
Yes, and that is the thing.
Because we can read books all day, and I've read plenty of books on abundance and manifestation and the whole nine. I mean, our library at home will show you that. But we can read our entire lives and not actually feel what we're talking about. And I've done that before. I've gone and talked about things that I've read and just basically regurgitating the information without actually understanding it,
When you can feel it truly down, like deep in your core, that's when you start to see the changes. That's when you start to see things happening. I actually, the law of attraction, I think is so misunderstood.
And has become a money grab.
It has become a money grab. And I think that, the idea that you attract, that's bullshit. Like, you don't attract, you align. You can't attract. You don't create this experience that comes towards you, right? And I would imagine this person probably agrees or doesn't. I don't know. But the act of attracting makes me cringe. It's like, no, that doesn't happen that way. Aligning, we can align with something. You tune into that same frequency as the experience of everything else in that moment that's creating it at the same time. It's a co-creative experience, and that's another thing that we didn't touch on with this abundance topic is the ability of co-creation. So many times people get frustrated because they're not getting what they want and they're not aligning with what it is that they think they should have by now, which once again lines up with expectations. Our expectations are what gets in our way of our happiness. But also we're all co-creating this. We're all co-creating this. There are a lot of factors at play. It's not just simple. You can't just flip on a switch and then say, oh, well, I did my meditations, I did my chantings, I did my, visualizations. Why am I not getting what I want? Like, there's a whole cosmic web that we can't possibly fathom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I think that when we can tune into the reality of this being a co-created experience, a collective, we're experiencing this together, then we can kind of ease up on our expectations and just take a step back.
Apparently we're being too general here. So where can we clarify for you and get deeper in this conversation? Because we'll take it down the rabbit hole.
No, I'm not, and this is another thing, Tanya, like, we're not pretending to have the answers. Like, conscious conversations, the purpose of this is for us to just bring up topics for people to talk about and to get curious about and to think about in other ways that they perhaps haven't before.
We are not gurus or pretending to be gurus.
No,
we are two people having a conversation right now.
Two people having a conversation. Line up, align. It means just focusing on something and making positive actions. It means just focusing on something and making positive actions. To some degree, I agree with that. Absolutely. Because you do have to create the experience itself. But to take positive action, you first have to break your patterns that have been conditioned from the time that we've manifest into this reality and experience this so many realities. I mean, think about the influence your parents have on the way that you see reality, the influence your teachers have, your neighbors, your friends. And
you're being indoctrinated by other people's beliefs at all turns. Everywhere you go, you're being indoctrinated. And that is a lifetime of breaking all of that indoctrination and that conditioning. And it's a constant battle of breaking down until you can align with who you are and remembering. That's the point of this entire existence, is to remember.
To get back on Tanya's point about making positive action, the only way to make that positive action is when you've done that work through the unconscious and subconscious realms. Because if by the age 35, we're operating at a 95% unconscious, existence, then whatever dirt and baggage we're carrying in that shadow, that's going to be what creates and inspires the action that we do take, the thoughts that we continue to think. And so the idea is that we become that observer to be able to change those patterns, interrupt those patterns, and then start to take proactive measures. But it comes through not just action, but also that visualization, and visualization in a clear way that not just are images passing through your mind, but creates a coherent response between thought and emotion, because that creates that physiological change, which creates a state of being, thus again creating that cycle. So that's why positive action has to be done repetitively, and it has to be done along with visualizing. It has to be done with getting clear on what it is that you truly do desire to experience but not necessarily have, because once again, it's not about what we have that creates abundance. It's about tuning into what we are in that moment of experiencing it. And I think it's a really beautiful topic to bring up. And I think that, when we can start to see how powerful we really are as these creators, we can empower each other to challenge each other and ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper until we break down all of those limiting beliefs that really are holding us back.
And at the end of the day, if we can all do this, we can co-create a more peaceful or compassionate experience on Earth while we're here. It doesn't have to be the way it is. We don't have to live by the status quo of why things are the way they are and they have been for thousands of years. That is a collective agreement that can be broken at any time. And I challenge every single person watching this to tap into this and to really find out and feel what this actually means. Because once you do so, number one, it's the most magical experience of your entire life. And life becomes a lot easier. It's not so hard anymore. And two, we can then use this to really create the world we want to create. And I'm sure every single person, regardless if you agree or not, can agree on one thing. And that is to create a world in which that everybody is prosperous, healthy, happy, and free. And of course, that sounds like a utopia. It is. But you know what? Why can't we create that? Why can't we? And sure, I might be the, millionth person to say this, but I still keep that optimism because I know the people that are co-creating that experience can shift and tune into that reality, and we can live that together. Even if hell is going on around you, if you can tap into that, we can have that shared reality together. And I would love every single person to experience that. And I would.
And we're not even pretending to have to. We're not even pretending that we are experiencing this fully, and that's the thing. That's why we're having.
That's why we're talking about it right now on Facebook Live.
There are certain layers. There are certain layers of this that we, as we progress through the awareness of ourselves, there's certain layers that we're able to fully grasp and understand.
I want to read what Rich says. He says, hard to understand this level of awareness when we've been brainwashed with quotes that say survival of the fittest. And it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of the needle than it's for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
That's another thing is, we condemn a lot of people who their external reality reflects abundance. But, this is interesting because you can be the richest man in the world and be miserable. You can be the poorest man in the world and be miserable. You can be the richest man in the world and be happy. You can be the poorest man in the world and be happy. And, that just goes to show that it truly does stem from an internal balance and an internal harmony. And once again, proves the point that what you have or don't have does not reflect your abundant mindset. We keep thinking like, oh, if I'm aligned with abundance, and that means I'm going to have all these things. Not necessarily. Your abundant mindset. What?
No, keep going. Keep going. I just want to say real quick, just to kind of tune in here for a second. Tanya said that your utopia is unachievable. Well, guess what? I'm going to disagree with that one and talk about how utopia is first found within itself. So it's totally achievable if you want to go there. And the survival of the fittest point of this and natural selection dictates the world, and it's not possible. And that is something that maybe we can't see eye to eye on. But what I can say
is to ask why, like, get curious about why we believe these things. You know, our textbooks in school have told us these things, but does that mean they are true? People argue and say science tells us it must be true, but science is also an ever evolving entity that deepens its own awareness of the world. So nothing is necessarily set in stone truth. And we need to question why we believe that these things cannot happen. Do we believe these things cannot happen because it just seems so far-fetched and out of reach? Yeah, because we get afraid. We see how much work we have to do to even get that, and it's like, shit. Like when I tune in our ideas of utopia and then I watch the news or something, I'm like,
when was the last time we even watched
I know, but if something comes on, I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is impossible. This is never going to happen, especially when you see this, the atrocities happening with enslavement and, animal torture and all of this stuff. It's like, I mean, obviously that's not the only thing. There's so much suffering in the world. And so then I get discouraged and I start to say, well, it must be true that it can't happen because some of the most brilliant minds of all time have told me it's not possible. And they've told me that this is how it goes. And that is taking away my power and everyone else's power to make new agreements as a collective. It's taking away everyone's power. In that moment that I say it's not true, it cannot happen, I've signed off on another agreement once again that says, okay, then it will never happen.
And by agreeing to that, we're just feeding into this same and perpetual agreement that will never stop because it's the same story that we keep creating. But we can break the chain. We, as conscious creators, can decide in that moment in time to break it right then and there. And if we want to do that, great. If you want to keep, living on that side of the fence, feel free. But we can also shift into a new reality ourselves and move that direction if we want to. And as human consciousness keeps evolving, as we keep shifting into a new awareness, which we definitely are, things are speeding up, whether you're tuned in or not. You're going for the ride. You bought the ticket, you're taking the ride.
Because we're here. We're all here. We're co-creating this experience right now.
So you don't have a choice, but either you can align with that or you can align with the other thing.
The older agreements.
The older agreements. But I prefer to make new agreements, and that feels more empowering to me. And it could seem so far-fetched, but you know what? That's what feels good for me. And if that other thing feels great for you, then that's so be it. Wonderful, beautiful. Like I appreciate everybody for who they are in how they express themselves and who they are in truth.
Because that changes from moment to moment. Who was I 5 years ago? Was I having this conversation? Probably not. Was I arguing about some of these points? Probably. And that's okay. We might be a totally different person 5 minutes ago than we are now. And that's what I would hope, is that we can challenge each other. We can ask each other these questions, and that we can experience different perspectives to. Plants don't grow unless they have a little bit of stress. They have to have some kind of external stimulus that encourages it to grow,
to shake
and
your
evolve,
ass,
to strengthen, and to expand. And that's what this human experience is. I want to see, Tanya said, conscious creation is all very well, but you cannot succeed against the force of nature. It's funny, actually, I agree about the force of nature. And this is also the paradox. This is the paradox here that we face. The force of nature, when looked at from perhaps a human perspective, can be brutal. It can be absolutely brutal. Now, when we can kind of pull ourselves out of the experience and look at it from an observational perspective, we see it as a flow, as a divine balance. And I don't hate that I use the word divine there, because it's so well crafted and orchestrated that it flows in this dance that destroys and creates and destroys and creates. But the thing is that evolves as well. And it's a reflection too of our consciousness, as is our consciousness a reflection of it. And so if we're feeding into this reality and this experience, then why not challenge ourselves to make new agreements and think outside of the box? Instead of saying, I can't, we can't, why not well, if it's really important, why can't we shift I can't, we can't to how can I? How can we?
And can I mention about, to the point of nature, that at this moment in time, it can seem perceivably worse than it's ever been in our most recent history of things happening, water shortages, all the droughts, and all the different things that are happening on Earth in regards to nature. But it's all perfect because chaos has to ensue, chaos has to happen before we can have any sort of evolution. And it's the same thing about going into yourself. You have to face your fears, you have to face your anxieties, you have to face them head on. There is no way around it. We can't bypass anything. We have to take it right on head on. And as we accept that as it is, that's when we jump to the next level in consciousness, and that's when we keep moving up and ascending. And
Ascension.
Talk about ascension.
Now we can get real woo-woo.
I love it, baby. I love it.
If someone has captured you, kidnapped you, and is torturing you, obviously you can go within yourself mentally, but it shouldn't. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I agree with you 110% there. Thank you for bringing that up. The reality does not change, but the perception of the experience does. And I'm going to share a quick story because, Tanya, I don't know how much you know about me, and it doesn't even really matter. Some of our watchers already know this story, but I was attacked and gang raped when I was serving in the Peace Corps in Africa, and it was a really brutal experience. And in just the span of the minutes that whole attack lasted, as I was about to lose my life, I had all of these crazy thoughts and things just flash right before my eyes. And it wasn't my past. It wasn't my life. And everybody says life flashes before your eyes. That's not what happened. It was suddenly a realization of the unfulfillment of a perhaps purpose, so to speak, or a calling that I had been ignoring. Not quite ignoring consciously, but had just been straying from that path, which became the path to get me to where I needed to be, to use that as an evolutionary catalyst to actually grow. But the reality doesn't change. I was beaten, I was raped, I almost died. That is not subjective. That is what happened. That is absolutely not going to change. But now what's got interesting is you see all the different people. You have myself who experienced it from one perspective. You have the people who did the attack experiencing it from a different perspective. You have the people who found me and carried me to the hospital who have a different perspective. You have my parents who are obviously affected by this emotionally, my brother, my friends, my partners, whatever. Everybody had a different opinion about what was happening. Everybody had a different belief about what happened. The only power that I had to get through that was to find within myself a variety of ways to see this same reality from different angles. And that gave me the freedom to choose. Okay, I could choose path number one, where I am consumed by anger and hatred and judgment and fear. And don't get me wrong, I experienced those through my healing process, but I could have chose path number one where I became consumed by it, or I could have chose path number two where I see it as something outside of my control, much grander in the sense of like there were 7 of them, 1 of me. So we look at how they had to all make certain choices for everything to have happened. I had to have made certain choices to have been even in the same, walking on the same street as them. So that was an interesting way to look at it. And then also looking at it from their fear and their pain. How much pain had they been in their whole lives to create the actions or choose the actions that they did in such a violent, horrible way? What happened to them to create an unconscious, subconscious part of their identity and entities that actually motivated them to continue making all the tiny little choices they had to make for us to all be in that moment and them choose to take that action? So that's me looking at now suddenly not sympathizing with them. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not I've forgiven them, but I'm not saying what they did was okay. There's a difference. You know, you can forgive someone, you can look at the reality in a different way, but not condone the behavior. So, but what that did was that allowed me to enter a space of compassion, not condonement. Is that even a word? I don't even know if condonement's a word.
Go with it.
With, you know, a space of compassion for them. And, you know, I still followed through with the whole judicial system, even though that failed. But it gave me freedom to perceive the reality as something that felt better for myself. And some people don't agree with it. Some people think it's naive. Some people think that it's, you know, I don't know what. But you know what? They're not the ones who almost died. And so I have that choice. You know, a cat can die. There can be I take this from the Book of Freedom by Paul Selig. I highly recommend it.
We just interviewed on our podcast.
There can be a dead cat. Nobody's arguing that the dead cat is there or not. The dead cat is there. One person can look at that dead cat and say, oh, how disgusting. Get this horrible thing away from me. That's their personal experience related to that dead cat. They have created their emotions, their thoughts, their whole reality has just been shaped off the way that they feel about this dead cat. The second person might look at this dead cat and say, oh my God, how horrible, the poor thing. This is just so sad. Now their reality is shaped by the dead cat. And then you can have another person who looks at it and say, oh, how beautiful, the being is no longer suffering. The being is no longer in this confinement of the illusion of separation. It is free. So whether we agree with that person or not, they create their own experience based off that dead cat. So you have three people having three totally different experiences based off the reality of the dead cat. And so I absolutely do agree with you. And that was a really long tangent. I'm sorry.
No, it was worth it. It was great. And so, I mean, this is what we're talking about. This is why we're doing this. This is why this is episode 7 of Conscious Conversations, because we don't know where we're going down. We have no clue the rabbit holes we're going to go down. And that's the beautiful thing about it, because this is our lives on a daily basis of actually having these conversations and talking about these things. And we decided, why not bring it to Facebook and have other people engage on this? Whether we agree or not, it doesn't matter. We don't care. We love all of you, no matter what your perspective is. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And we truly mean that. So please, we welcome you to the table. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for showing up. And we will continue to do this every single week. Usually they're on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Today is a little different because yesterday we had a long day. It was tiresome. Mm-hmm. And so we had to reschedule for tonight. But generally they're Wednesdays, 8 p.m. So be sure next week, I think it's the 26th, we will be here at 8. It will be a long day of travel, but we should be here unless otherwise. We will have a schedule that goes up. But anyways, once again, we appreciate you guys coming on and continue to comment. We will continue this conversation if you want in the thread. And next week, who knows? We have a whiteboard. We choose some topics that people want to talk about, and we just flow with it.
Absolutely. So you guys have a wonderful night. We're going to go hang out with my family as we are on vacation. So.
Yes. You guys have a beautiful night. Take care.
Bye.